Love Live has had rivals before, and it's certainly had student council presidents who are an obstacle to the protagonists before joining the Idol Club themselves, but it's never had a dynamic quite like Kiki and Sumiere's. Superstar reduced the cast from the typical 9 main characters for a Love Live series down to a more traditional for a slice of life anime 5. This approach has many possible advantages and disadvantages, but one thing it is definitely odd for is more time showing the characters actively growing closer. This has allowed the series to explore something it never has before in Sumiere's dynamic, which starts as a quite frankly a hostile relationship even after they're both part of the group. Typically, once a character joins the Idol Club, they're not seriously at odds with the others anymore. When Ellie joins in School Idol Project, there isn't still tension between her and Honoka. Same with Shika and Daya, or the third years in general in Sunshine. Their feud ends, and they make up when they join the group. The most there's been is something like Yo being jealous of Riko, or Ayumi's jealousy towards Setsuna, both of which were one-sided and less I hate you and more don't steal my girl. From Sumiere's proper debut to the group, however, her and Kiki are at odds. In episode 4, Sumiere attempts to join the Idol Club after having seen Kanon and Kiki's performance in the previous episode. Kiki rather enthusiastically lets her in, but when she's not immediately given the center role, Sumiere leaves, revealing she joined because she believed her past experience as a child actor would make her immediately shine in comparison to amateurs, which she thinks all school idols are by default. Kiki is pissed at this and even demands the next day for Sumiere to get her ass to the roof to try and challenge her to a dance fight. Kanon tries to investigate, and Sumiere ends up telling her about how she could never get a lead role. She was always off to the side, and Kanon realizes she's really insecure about it, thinking she's not good enough to be a star. Kanon ends up deciding to recruit her into the club like a talent agent, challenging her to come take the center role if she thinks she deserves it, which she accepts. In the next 2 episodes, Kiki and Sumiere, both being very exaggerated and eccentric comic characters, butt heads frequently. It's never anything too hostile, and they even get along in their own way at points, with Sumiere even trying to help Kiki when she fails at cooking. However, episode 7 is when things start to get outright hostile. With the school holding its first student council election, Kiki becomes worried that if Ren wins, she'll shut down the Idol Club, because she's been against it existing from the start. She and Chisato try to get Kanon to run, but Kanon, being an anxious mess who's bad with crowds, tries everything she can to get out of it. Sumiere, on the other hand, is all too happy to run, which Kanon immediately encourages as a means to get out of it. Kiki and Chisato are dismissive of the idea, however, and Kiki especially continues to try and get Kanon to run, and openly voices her opinion that Sumiere will never win. A lot of fans see this stuff in this episode as crossing a line, and just the characters and the show in general being too mean to Sumiere, which I get. In each Love Live group, there's always been a comic relief character who tends to be the butt of the joke more often than not. While there are complaints occasionally brought up in regards to the treatment of Nico, Yoshiko, and Kasumi, with Sumiere, it's way more prevalent. The issue here is solely with Kiki. Kanon always treats Sumiere well, and while Chisato makes a joke or two, there's more moments where she seems to go along with Sumiere's weirdness than anything. Kiki, however, is outright mean to her at points. A lot of their banter early on, especially in episodes 7 and 8, is outright aggressive, and Kiki genuinely comes off as not liking Sumiere. But the thing is, this is all completely intentional. I remember when these episodes, 7 in particular, first aired, hoping the show would address this all, and even saying so in a discussion in a Discord server I'm in. I felt like the show needed to, which, thank God, they did. It gets a full episode, in fact. Sumiere and Kiki both have sympathetic backstories and a motivation. Sumiere is a failed child actress who wants the spotlight she never got. Constantly being off to the side, never getting a starring role, basically always being the bridesmaid and never the bride, led to her developing a lot of insecurity. Her showboating about her past in show business is a cover-up. She's really incredibly insecure and feels like she not only doesn't deserve the spotlight, but any attempt she actually has to get it that's not her pushing her way into it or being recruited by a talent agent is solely pity. Only Kanon knows this, however, because of how Sumiere acts. She hides her feelings and basically puts on a tough front. In the first episode, she's outright rude to Kanan simply for trying to talk to her, and nothing implies that she's not the same way towards her other classmates. She doesn't actually take the election seriously either. She just uses it as an opportunity to be in the spotlight, which is what leads to her losing incredibly badly when her main idea to get votes, bribing people with food, gets her a penalty. While to the audience, and to Kanan in universe, her background and insecurities make her sympathetic, and her actions very understandable. Sumier's flaw is her unwillingness to let others see her as vulnerable. She outright says she doesn't want to be pitied in episode 10, nor does she by Kanan earlier. This results in others in universe, Kiki most notably, taking her arrogance and rudeness at face value, because it's the only thing she lets most people see. Of the members of Leela, Kiki is the one who gets the least of her backstory explored in season 1. This was definitely intentional, as they're most likely leaving it open for when they inevitably follow up on the whole if she can't win Love Live, she has to go back to China plotline. However, we do actually get hints of her backstory, particularly in episode 3. She mentions how her parents were incredibly strict on her in terms of focusing on academics, to a degree that at one point she thought her grades were all she was ever worth. This is reinforced in, ironically, a quick gag where we see she's literally able to answer math problems in her sleep. As I mentioned earlier, we, and later Sumire herself, also learn her parents only let her move to Japan to pursue being an idol on the condition that if she doesn't succeed, she has to come back home, adding to the idea that they put pressure on her and weren't fully on board with her dreams. Kiki also mentioned that people have belittled their passions in the past. So when someone like Sumire comes in, wanting to be the center simply because she thinks all the school idols are amateurs and she's inherently better than any of them, Kiki gets pissed, getting increasingly ruder to her till episode 10. In Kiki's eyes, Sumire is just another person who thinks their passions are dumb. However, just like Sumire, her actions being understandable doesn't justify them. In episode 5, for instance, Sumire genuinely tries to help Kiki when she fails at cooking, but Kiki just acts annoyed about it later on. A part of that is Sumire trying to lie and say Kiki did it all herself, though this isn't a lie out of maliciousness. It's definitely easy to infer it's partially because it was Sumire specifically, someone who Kiki thinks and someone who acts like she believes she's better than everyone else. She teases Sumire a lot about the Gusakumashi bit, the biggest role Sumire ever got as a child actress. It's mentioned she basically forced the info out of Kanan, and while at points Sumire seems okay with going along with the bit, most of the time it just reminds her of her past failures. The Student Council election storyline is where all of this comes to a head. It's portrayed a bit over the top because that's Kiki's character, but she's legitimately worried about Ren shutting down the club. And earlier in the series, she wanted to switch schools just on the idea of the club not being able to form, and tried to start a protest to fight it as well. We also see in episode 2, when the principal explains to Ren she can't keep the club from forming just because she's the founder's daughter, Kiki looks very smug about it and is happy to see Ren being told off. There's a moment where Ren mentions her mother, who we later learn passed away, and Ren has been living on her own and putting immense pressure on herself as a result. And Kanan looks over in what looks like concern, or at the very least curiosity, but Kiki's face stays the same, staying smug. We also see in episode 8, after the club members have learned Ren's deal and are trying to ease the tension between the music and general course students at the school, Kiki is completely willing to switch to fighting with the general course students against her when the idea is brought up, making things harder for Kanan to try and ease the tension. This is also what Sumire does during this plotline, snarking at Kanan's attempts to try and convince a crowd, but being unwilling to help when asked. Even when earlier she had tried to use this tension as an opportunity to get a revote so she could be elected president. Yet, in spite of all this, Kiki ends up being perfectly fine with Ren once she joins, and is completely open to her joining the group as well right after she first apologized. None of this is bad writing, or contradictory in my eyes. Both Kiki and Sumire have sympathetic aspects to their characters that make their actions understandable, but they're still not meant to be right, and that's the point. As I mentioned, episode 10 is entirely about this. It's an episode the show needed to work, and we got it. All of this is part of a story arc, and this episode is the ending of that. In episode 10, the group discovers Love Live has added a new element's regional qualifiers. Groups in each region have a specific challenge that they need to incorporate into their performance, and in theirs, it's rap. Kanan, Chisato, and Ren all try, but fail, and Kiki does it well in Chinese, so she's not able to do it either. But, much to Kiki's chagrin, Sumier ends up being the best of all of them at it. Kanan, Chisato, and Ren decide to make her the song's center. Despite this being what she's always wanted, Sumier is hesitant to take the role, and tries to get out of it. The group notes that despite how much she talks about wanting to be the center, she never actually tries to get it when it's up for discussion. We even see a glimpse of this in episode 8. She's perfectly fine letting Ren take the center role. This fact is only strengthened when their classmates say they think Sumier makes a weak center, and someone like Kanan and Ren makes a better lead. She tries to brush it off in the way she always has up to this point, but is visibly upset by it. During all of this, Kanan says to the others she thinks Sumier acts the way she does because of what she's been through, and tells Kiki she needs to stop being so hard on her, mentioning how, despite how Sumier acts, she thinks she regrets how she belittled Kiki's passions early on. This is later indirectly confirmed in a way. A big turning point of the episode involves Sumier overhearing a phone call between Kiki and her sister, learning that Kiki will be forced by her parents to give up and come home if she doesn't succeed as an idol. At the climax of the episode, when the others say they still believe in Sumier and want her to be the center, she gets mad and says she doesn't want it just out of pity, visibly breaking when she says she thinks that it will keep them from winning, unspokenly saying she doesn't want to keep Kiki from pursuing her dreams. The two finally end up talking. We even learn in a way they're both similar. They both don't want the others doing something out of pity for them. Kiki tells Sumier how she's come to truly believe in her after seeing how hard she's worked throughout the episode, and would never say she thinks she should be the center if she didn't truly mean it. After Sumier symbolically accepts the role, Kiki calls out to her, and she knows it's the first time she's called her by name, which is a point that I didn't even notice till this episode brought it up. Despite all their interactions, prior to this moment, Sumier and Kiki never once called each other by their names, unlike any of the other members. And there's a good reason for this. Before this episode, they're not friends. They're in the same club, they spend a lot of time together, but they're not friends like they are with the other members, or at the very least like Kiki is with Chisato and Kanan, and Sumier is presumably with Kanan by this point. This episode is about them coming to truly understand and respect each other. The whole point of their arc before now was that how they were acting was wrong, and they both needed to grow past it. Sumier hides her feelings behind an arrogant act, while Kiki is vocally harsh to her to a degree that goes too far and just becomes mean. Through their conflict, they end up realizing their own mistakes, and grow to being better individuals through their relationship with one another. Even the song at the end of the episode, Nonfiction, is about this to a degree. The first line is Sumier singing about wanting to be more honest. There's a line about cracking a poker face, and the song in general is about entering a new world that you never knew existed, but is very much real. It's nonfiction, after all. The relationship enters a new world by finally opening up and letting one another in, becoming a genuine friendship. This all gets reinforced in the last two episodes. Their banter and butting heads becomes a lot less hostile. It's more friendly teasing and a clash of personalities than insulting one another. In the course of one scene in episode 11, Kiki calls out Sumier when she tries to do her "of course I'm amazing" act, but also genuinely lets her have her moment to shine and is happy for her, unlike the previous episode where early on she's visibly upset when Sumier is succeeding. In episode 12, Kiki wants to get rid of her poster of idol group Sunny Passion till after the Love Live regionals, since they're competing against them and she wants to get in the mindset of seeing them as true rivals. We learned earlier in this season this poster is incredibly important to her, and that Sunny Passion is who inspired her own dreams. She trusts it's Sumier, not Kanan, Chisato, or Ren, who all easily could have taken it, but Sumier. And she says she's the only one who she could turn to. In essence, she's vocally trusting Sumier with her passions above anyone else. This arc isn't something Love Live has done before, and it's one of the things I really loved about Superstar. With the reduced cast, we're able to much more closely see how the group grows closer over an extended period of time. Every character gets at least a couple episodes dedicated to some arc with them, and all of them have grown in their own ways by the end of the season. Specifically, they do so by facing the demons of their pasts. We especially see Sumier do this, and in the process, Kiki begins to as well. Throughout most of the season, Sumiere's attempts at hiding her insecurities leads to her becoming, in Kiki's eyes, the embodiment of everyone who's ever put her down. And in her retaliation at that, Kiki ends up becoming the embodiment of everyone who's made Sumiere feel like she'll never be good enough to be the star of the show. Their actions aren't right, but they're understandable, and it's through coming to understand one another that they become better together.